Hey everyone, I'm Kaiyuri, the lore singer, and today I'll be sharing the story of the beastman race known as the Ixals. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a crafter. I don't tend to mess with profession systems in most MMOs that I play. Something recently drove me to try it out in 14, which led me to the Ixal tribe quests, and I thought it would be a good chance for me to dig into their lore in general. So without further ado, let's dive in. If you frequent the Manderville Gold Saucer, you might have played a little mini-game of cards called Triple Triad. The Ixal card that you can collect reads thusly. This aggressive mountain tribe claim the wind-blasted canyons of Zelphatal as their domain. Though their race has long since lost the capacity for flight, the feathered beastmen are fervently proud of their vestigial wings. The Ixals seek to re-establish their presence in the Black Shroud that they might once again fell trees in worship of their fickle deity, an ambition which places them at odds with the people of Gridania. Their homeland of Zelphatal is north of the Black Shroud and east of Kurthus in the mountain range Abalathia Spine. Although we as players currently do not have access to Zelphatal to explore, the Ixals are slowly encroaching into other parts of Aldenard. The majority of them can be found in Kurthus Central Highlands, with a high concentration in Natalan, and throughout the North Shroud, especially at the Ixali logging grounds. The Ixals worship a vicious primal named Garuda, and due to this, they have a high affinity for wind magic. They make frequent raids on the Twelves Wood for timber in both everyday use and in rituals for their goddess, as well as poaching game from the forest, leading to constant conflicts with the residents of Gridania. By contrast, they mostly ignore Ishgardian establishments, and the Ishgardians are too busy with the Dragon Song War to deal with the nearby Ixals in Natalan, so they mostly leave each other alone. Let's make a quick side note on Garuda, since she plays a huge role in Ixali culture. Garuda is nicknamed the Lady of the Vortex, due to her affinity for the wind and air. Her card in the Triple Triad game reads, "Summoned by the Ixal tribes of Zelphatal, Garuda harbors the uncanny ability to manipulate the very air which surrounds her. The winds she wields, however, have twisted her heart and broken her mind, rendering the Lady of the Vortex a merciless tyrant with an appetite for destruction that is nigh insatiable." So, basically, she's crazy. Personality-wise, she's probably one of the most sadistic primals that we face in the game. But for all their groveling, she at least gifts the Ixals air stones to power and guide their balloons. That's something. While we're on the subject of those balloons, the Ixals are known for designing and using balloon-powered vehicles for transport and in their conflicts with the other races. Since they lost their ability to fly long ago, the balloons were developed in an attempt to recapture that connection to the air. Much of this history and culture is learned through an unlikely friend. Yes, it turns out that not all Ixals are hostile to the races. Most of the beastmen tribes in the game have their own dedicated questline. For this story, we start in Gridania, where we hear news from Serpent Lieutenant Scarlet of an attack on a sentry post in North Shroud by an Ixali war balloon. We set out to lend a hand and find that the attackers were shot down by a lucky arrow. While investigating the abandoned wreckage, we are verbally harassed by an Ixal in the forest. Before any physical conflict arises, he is chastised by a second Ixal, whom he refers to as Chieftain Sazul Totolak. Sazul claims that his particular tribe is not a part of the group that attacked the sentry post, and invites us humbly into his camp in a sign of goodwill and to barter for a balloon part that we salvaged from the wreckage. Inside, he explains that his crew, called the Ixal 9, are outcasts of the Ixali people, due to having no desire to serve Garuda or war with the people of Gridania. Instead, they seek only to fulfill their dream of flying higher than anyone ever has before, by combining the best designs of Ixali war balloons with airship designs of the non-beastman races, and building the greatest airship to ever grace the skies. Thus does this unlikely friendship begin to sprout. We are not alone in the cast of this story, however. We find ourselves at the workstation in nearby Fallgourd Float to help Sazul by crafting parts for the airship. Before we can even start our work, we are interrupted by a young Lalafell named Tataramu, who claims we had stolen his materials. Insisting that anything we craft will be a useless waste of resources, he challenges us to prove him wrong, offering to appraise our work free of charge. Though he is shocked by the quality of our craft, he somehow concludes that we were commissioned by Ixals attempting to build a warship. The appalled Lalafell then rushes off to find their camp and try to stop them. When we return to Ixal to give Sazul our crafted airship component, Tataramu arrives and angrily scolds Sazul about sullying the field of airship engineering by putting weapons on an airship. However, upon discovering the Ixal 9's true intentions and the genius of Sazul's airship schematics, Tataramu becomes so excited and impassioned that he requests to join his crew and make the airship, dubbed Deizo Kolan, a reality. Here, Sazul also enlightens us to a little snippet of Ixali history, when the beastmen could still fly with their own wings. After being cursed and banished by the elementals of the forest, their wings grew stunted and they were no longer able to fly. Sazul's forefathers built great balloons in order to recapture the joy of flight. Eventually, however, the Ixals of Natalan began worshipping and serving Garuda in hopes that she would one day grant them wings again. Sazul believes that these Ixals have forgotten their dreams of flight and merely grovel to the primal, as she has never seemed interested in bestowing flight onto her followers. The next component we try to help craft, due to its hard-to-find materials, leads us to Gudanya. Coulson, Tataramu's contact, turns out to be an advisor of the renowned airship company Highwind Skyways. He, along with the God's Quiver who oversees Gudanyan's security, has been tearing the city inside out, looking for the son of the company's chairman. Of course, this boy is none other than our friend Tataramu, who apparently escaped Coulson's tutelage during their visit to Gudanya. Although Coulson considers declining the boy's request due to the trouble he's caused the city for his disappearance, curiosity drives Coulson to finally agree to help us with the materials. After returning to Ixal with the finished airship component, Tataramu explains his displeasure for his exalted status of heir to a merchant empire and the lectures he must endure about how to profitably run a company. He explains that he has no interest in building or being known for wealth, but rather for designing airships, hence the excitement over the Ixal project. Later on, Sazul laments the crew's lack of a particular tool required to continue the project. Overhearing the conversation, Tataramu recalls seeing something a long time ago in his grandfather's workshop that may help. Although no one in Fallgord Float remembers the existence of such a shop, we search through an old pile of unclaimed items in storage and successfully find a gear wheel. Tataramu finds a small inscription on its surface that reads, "For my dear friend Deizo Kolan, on these wings I pledge our everlasting bond, Tata Nora." Surprised by the familiar names, Tataramu urges us to return to Ixal and speak with Sazul about their find. After handing Sazul the gear wheel, Tataramu points out the inscription on its surface and explains that Tata Nora was his grandfather, the original founder of Highwind Skyways 46 years ago. This prompts Sazul to laugh at the irony, as Deizo Kolan was his mentor, which is why he named their airship after him. Deizo Kolan had clearly been close friends with Tata Nora. He muses that destiny brought the inscribed gear wheel into their hands, since it seems the past is now repeating itself in their friendship. The Ixal project would not long remain unopposed, however. During our work, we catch sight of an airship flying close by. The camp is then invaded by a band of armed men. The crew's cries of outrage are interrupted as Tataramu's father arrives, berating his son for his insolence and association with the Ixals. Though our young friend attempts to argue and appeal to Tatabaru, his words fall on deaf ears. We can do nothing but watch as the head of Highwind Skyways orders Tataramu taken away. Some time passes and Sazul finds that he misses Tataramu more than he realized he would. To help, we set off on a mission to retrieve our friend. Keen ears lead us to the observatorium in Kurthis, and with a bit of sleeping potion and some guards' wine goblets, we manage to free Tataramu from his room. Before making it outside of town, however, we are waylaid by Advisor Coulson. He warns us that defying Tatabaru again is a bad idea, but Tataramu manages to change his mind by expressing his passion in eschewing riches and prestige and sharing his dream with the Ixals of flying towards the heavens. Coulson recognizes his fervent dedication and allows him to leave with the promise to speak with the chairman and try to change his mind as Tataramu did to Coulson. Although things seem to be looking bright again, Seizel's teary-eyed reunion with Tataramu in Ixal is interrupted by hostile Ixals from Natalan. They have finally found the Ixal's secret workshop and are condemning the unsanctioned project as an affront to the goddess Garuda. They shriek at the Ixal 9 threateningly and vow to return with a larger force of retribution. The next time we meet with Seizel, he seems undeterred by the confrontation. By contrast, he's actually extremely excited, as the crew has entered its final phase of the project. After returning from the Falgord float workstation with the last airship component, we receive unfortunate news that the Ixals in Natalan are priming their war balloons and the airstones that power them for an assault. Assuming the worst, Seizel asks for another favor. Since we are the only true warrior within this camp of craftsmen, he wishes us to sabotage the enemy's efforts in Natalan before they can take to the skies. The Ixal 9's hidden contact in Natalan is Tuzol Tolton, who explains that the airstones that propel the Ixali war balloons are charged with vortex arrays that channel elemental wind currents. To disable these arrays, Tuzol hands us a set of corrupted crystal shards, which we place into the arrays to disperse the power currents. After the deed is done, we rush over to the observatorium to keep watch over both the Black Shroud and Kurthis. On the way to the top of the building, Tataramu meets us and explains that there was one last array hidden in a ravine, which had enough power to prime the airstones for one balloon. Once outside, we see that there is indeed a war balloon making its way toward the defenseless Ikato camp. While Tataramu laments our terrible fortune, an airship suddenly rises from below and heads straight for the war balloon. Tataramu exclaims with surprise and excitement as he recognizes it as his father's personal ship, the Blackjack. We watch the airship collide head-on with the war balloon, veering away intact as their opponent falls from the sky. Tatabaru then signals with a lamp to his son to meet in Ixal. Back at the camp, we are joined by Tataramu's father and his attendants. He tells us he was lectured by Advisor Coulson and reminded of the slogan for high wind skyways coined by Tatanora all those years ago, "Spread your wings and soar." This brings Seizel into a fit of laughter, explaining that it was Deizo Kolan's favorite saying. Apologies and thanks are exchanged, and Tataramu hurries off to finish preparations for the test flight. We add a figurehead to the airship for good luck, and everyone in camp gathers to watch Dezokolan finally take to the skies. With Tataramu at the helm, although its descent seems smooth at first, the vehicle is suddenly beset by raging winds. Through his fear for his son, Tatabaru explains that the phenomenon is called the Witch's Shroud, turbulent air currents caused by a sudden difference in ethereal density above the trees, specifically in the Black Shroud. He mentions that it is the bane of even the most seasoned airship pilot, but he and all the others in Ixal shout their rallying support and encouragement for Tataramu to fly. The young Lalafell finally manages to pull the ship free of the air currents and shoots up high into the sky. We hear through Link Pearl from Tuzal that he has successfully broken their target record of flying higher than any ship ever has in Eorzea. After all the excitement and Tataramu's safe return to Ixal, Tataramu expresses his joy for the milestones we've hit and reminds us that there are still goals to reach, namely the Ixal's dream of Ayatlan. Dezokolan is still a prototype after all, and that was only a flight test, so there is more work to be done. With that, we make our way back to the Adder's Nest in Gridania to report on our extended absence, only to find that the good serpent Lieutenant Scarlet has been busy with other news to remember our mission. Something about the disappearance of the air to high wind skyways. And that is the story of the Ixal 9. Before I leave, I wanted to touch on a tiny bit of speculation concerning the ancestry of the Ixal race as a whole. So the Ixal 9 strive to return to the Ixali place of origin, Ayatlan, described as a floating continent in the sky. This could mean three things. They're relatives of the Vanu Vanu in the Sea of Clouds, they're created from experiments in Azizla by the Allagans, or they're originated from a completely unrelated or unknown place thus far. I personally like to believe they're cousins of the Vanu Vanu, but I'm just biased towards them to begin with. Anyway, that finally concludes my story of the Ixals. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe. If you have any questions, something to add, or a new story request, please feel free to comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and until my next tale, cheers!